Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Lawsuits destroy illegal DEI scholarships and blacks-only doctor databases. Yes, there's a doctor database that if you're black, I don't even know if it requires if you're black or not. If you want a black doctor and only a black doctor, because that's the only thing you can do to get well, there are black doctor databases that you can go to and get yourself a black-only doctor because they've got black doctor directories. Of course, this needs to stop. They're being sued over it. Your medical care is not dependent on your skin color or the skin color of the people treating you. You just need to make sure they're actual professionals and they come relatively well recommended to the extent that you even have a choice. You can't limit your choice based on skin color. And more lawsuits are starting to shut this nonsense down. From Undark, lawsuits against diversity initiatives in science multiply. A recent lawsuit against the American Chemical Society highlights the vulnerability of programs intended to promote DEI. And why would a DEI science program be vulnerable to lawsuits for DEI? Well, because they're not legitimate. There are laws against these things. On March 5th, Do No Harm, an organization that advocates against diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in medicine, among other issues, sued the American Chemical Society for its Scholars Program, which provides financial support to chemistry students from underrepresented backgrounds. Meaning if you're white or you're Asian, you need not apply to that scholarship program. The complaint argues the program is illegal because it's not open to white and Asian students. Yep, that's all it takes. Around 2 weeks later, Do No Harm also sued the University of Pennsylvania for its partnership with a database called the Black Doctors Directory, which allows patients to find black physicians. Do you know how dangerous it is to tell a patient who may not know any better, regardless of their skin color, that you should be focused on the skin color of your doctor? The medical outcomes as a result of that, people should be held criminally responsible for this. It's funny, it's stupid, and it's dangerous, so it's really not funny. The lawsuits join a recent uptick in legal action against universities, departments, and professional societies that host programs intended to increase diversity across academia, including the sciences. In May 2024, for example, white students at the University of Oklahoma sued their school, alleging the university discriminated against them by factoring in race when determining legal financial aid. Well, that obviously, if you're going to factor race in to an equation determining whether or not you're entitled to financial aid, then that is discrimination. It's pretty black and white, no pun intended. In August, a conservative activist group sued the Department of Education over a program which provides mentoring and research support to underrepresented students pursuing doctoral degrees. Those cases follow the Supreme Court's 2023 decision against factoring in race when considering college admissions, effectively striking down affirmative action. Quote, what's happened here is the organizations bringing these lawsuits, they're capitalizing on the fact that the Supreme Court struck down race-conscious admissions, said Vinay Harpalani, a professor at the University of New Mexico School of Law and an expert on affirmative action policies. Now, with President Donald Trump's administration in the White House and a conservative Supreme Court, more organizations may feel inclined to bring these types of lawsuits, he said. They're really trying to expand this doctrine, the scope of this idea the Supreme Court has, and it's not just an idea, it's like a completely reasoned and final judgment. It is the law. It's not just an idea of the Supreme Court, saying that we shouldn't use individual race at all in making any types of these decisions. Many legal scholars and scientists say that such cases will hurt the scientific community. So following the law will hurt the scientific community. Not tricking patients into going to doctors based on their skin color is going to hurt the scientific community. Are you going to have an Indian doctors database now? So if I'm Indian or if I just like Indian doctors, I can go to just them? How about Asian doctors or white doctors? It's the White Doctors Directory. Should we do that next? These people have completely lost their minds. Only lawsuits are bringing them back into order. Everyone gets to participate in society based on their merit. You don't get to destroy society. You get to participate in society. Here's what a chemistry researcher thinks. Quote, I just think that we're going backwards, said Daniel Mediola, a chemistry researcher at the University of Pennsylvania who's an alumnus of the ACS program. Quote, I feel like we're revisiting history again, and we're reliving or dissolving what has so far been accomplished with diversity. This is what they've accomplished with diversity. They've told patients who may not know any better because not everybody would know not to trust the medical community, but you have to second guess everyone, including the medical community, second guess all professionals. But not everybody was raised or understands they need to do that. It's not going forwards to lie to patients and try to confuse them into pursuing things that are only going to hurt them. Do No Harm brought the lawsuit against ACS on behalf of a student who they say met all the qualifications for the program except the racial requirement. The unnamed student, a high school senior with a 4.35 GPA, who plans to major in chemistry, wanted to apply for one of the scholarships of up to $5,000 per year. But the student, whom the complaint describes as half white and half South Asian, was ineligible. Do No Harm's lawsuit states that was because the Scholars Program is only open to applicants who are Black or of African descent, Hispanic or Latino or Indigenous. On its website, the ACS frames the program as an important way to help increase diversity in the sciences, noting that people from underrepresented groups make up 1/3 of college-aged U.S. citizens, but earn about 18% of chemical science bachelor degrees and little more than 10% of chemistry doctorates. More than 450 of the program's alumni have earned a doctorate. There is no legal reason to discriminate. If you have legal authority to do what you're doing, you can do it. If you don't, you can't make up a bunch of excuses as to why you're doing it. It poisons the entire community. Do No Harm describes the program in different language. Quote, the American Chemical Society is blatantly discriminating against aspiring chemists simply based on their skin color. In doing so, the organization alleges ACS violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs that receive federal financial assistance, and the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which says that individuals have equal rights to make and enforce contracts. Quote, you can't decide who to contract with and not contract with based on race, according to Dan Mornoff, an adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute, a conservative think tank, and the executive director of the American Civil Rights Project. Do No Harm's press release also says the ACS is in violation of a recent executive order on DEI initiatives in the federal government. In its complaint, the organization states the ACS constitutes as a federal program because of the assistance it receives in the form of tax deductions for charitable contributions. Do No Harm was launched in 2022 with the goal of protecting patients and physicians from woke healthcare. Its founder, Stanley Goldfarb, is the former associate dean at the University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine. Goldfarb has a long history of opposing what he considers discriminatory racial diversity programs as well as gender-affirming care for children. According to tax filings, the Do No Harm initiative was jump-started by a $1 million donation from the Family Foundation of Joseph Edelman, a hedge fund manager. Since 2022, the organization has used litigation as a way to target diversity programs, including initiatives at Pfizer, the University of Colorado, the University of Washington School of Medicine, and the American Association of University Women. They've also sought to influence legislation against pediatric gender-affirming care. Pediatric gender-affirming care. That's a little too young. More recently, they sued the University of Pennsylvania and others for a directory that allows patients to look for Black doctors, saying that the directory is illegal under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The lawsuit against Pfizer seems to have achieved Do No Harm's goal. In 2023, the company opened a diversity fellowship to applicants of all races. The loss of scholarships like the ACS Scholars Program would harm the scientific community, and in particular people who historically have lacked access and resources to pursue careers in the sciences, said Mendiola. No one says you can't have the program, they're just saying you can't run it illegally. That's like saying, hey, if we close down the supermarket, no one's going to be able to get food there. It's like, well, okay, but just run the supermarket legally, then everyone can get food there. Mendiola has experienced this, though, firsthand. The scholarship fund allowed him, he's originally from Venezuela, to focus on his lab research without having to take an outside job to sustain himself. Well, that's convenient, but it doesn't seem necessary. Not that you have to discriminate against people to do this. These programs, he said, are not discriminating. Quote, they're trying to give those races that have a historically low rate of participation a chance. Okay, do it, but follow the law when you're doing it. It's not that hard to follow the law. Even if it means you have to give half of a grant or 2/3 of a grant because you have to share it with other people because you're offering the grant on a legal basis. The Scholars Program has provided funding for around 3,500 students to support their studies in scientific fields. With these lawsuits, quote, there are students who are currently enrolled, Students who will be enrolled who see themselves being attacked, said Matt Hardings, an associate professor of chemistry at American University. Well, just explain to those students that you need to follow the law and they're not being attacked, they're being treated fairly. The potential loss of these programs, Harpalani added, could have a detrimental effect on scientific research if underrepresented scientists no longer have the resources to continue their careers. The field might lose important role models and new ways of thinking, because race is brain, or something like that. Mendiola shared a similar sentiment. Quote, I think what makes science move forward is to have a different perspective, because you come from a different background, he said. That is not what makes science go forward. Hard work, competency, and passion is what makes science go forward. Never skin color. Harpalani also pointed out that physicians of color are more likely to provide medical service in underserved areas. And some recent research has suggested that racial concordance, in which a patient and physician are the same race and the driving force behind the Black Doctors Directory, helps patients get better care and have more trust in the healthcare system. Other research has found that the evidence for this is more mixed, however, and the lawsuit that Do No Harm filed against the University of Pennsylvania describes the notion of racial concordance as thoroughly debunked. Of course, it's thoroughly debunked. You could have never come up with a theory for this that it would ever make sense. You have to have a certain standard of achievement, a merit-based standard, historical success and competency. You must have that. There's not going to be anything where it's like, well, yeah, if this guy's Asian, he does better with Asians. That's never going to be the case. There's never going to be legitimate data that could ever possibly show that. The American Chemical Society, meanwhile, is already changing language related to diversity, editing a headline on its website from advancing ACS's core value of diversity, equity, and inclusion and respect to advancing ACS's core value of inclusion and belonging. The recent round of applications for the Scholars Program just closed on March 1st, though it remains unclear whether the program will continue. Mendiola said he normally gets asked to be on the selection committee for high school and college applicants, but did not receive an inquiry this year. The ACS did not respond to a request for comment because they do not comment on active litigation. What's probably going down? Because they operated the program illegally, it probably is getting shut down. Because it's not in compliance with law, because it's not in compliance with the government's executive order, and it probably threatens other funding related to other programs, because it's so blatantly illegal. Any of these kinds of programs that wanted to clean themselves up could just cooperate with the federal government or whoever's providing funding to them and say, you know something, times have changed. We realize we need to treat everybody equally. Every student deserves an opportunity equal to other students. Of course, everyone can apply now, but it looks more like they'd rather shut down these programs than try to operate them fairly. And if that's the case, maybe helping students never had anything to do with it. Mornoff at the Manhattan Institute thinks Do No Harm's lawsuit has a good shot at success. Quote, I would bet pretty strongly that if this gets fought out, Do No Harm is going to win. But Harding suggested that even short of a court victory, the mere threat of lawsuits is likely to push many organizations to cancel or scale back their diversity programming. Quote, even that's a win for them, he said. All these skin color-based services and programs have absolutely got to go.